Welcome to Strength Chat with your host, that's right, myself, the mad scientist of strength, Chris Duffin. To my right, the wizard of training. You know, we didn't tell that story, where that came from.
We could tell that story.
The wizard of training, yes, and yeah. And to my far left, the man with no voice.
A deep voice.
And a decent poll. Hopefully he can beat my poll here soon, right? Mr. Brady Cable.
You know what? I think our podcast guests would be shocked at how small your competition deadlift is.
Shut up.
We don't need to talk about that. We'll bring it up in the next one. That'll be next week's story.
So we are on to our second, I guess, live or video podcast. So that's quite nice. So we have gone back to how we started our podcast originally, which was with a little drink, a little whiskey.
Whiskey and podcasts, new T-shirt, new life. That's the real lifestyle brand.
Someone's already got that made. You know that's already trademarked.
That's actually probably true.
Of course, Brady and our guest, who we will introduce shortly, are not drinking with us today. So it's just me and Brandon going to be pounding some whiskey today, which is kind of an interesting story with that and the fact that we're hosting a meet this weekend. We've got a 2-day-long meet. And how did you get that name, the Wizard in the Closet? Like,
well, is it the Wizard of Training or the Wizard in the Closet?
Wizard of the Closet. It was the Wizard.
Did we tell this last week?
Told it on the live call, not on the podcast.
Yeah, was that on the live call?
Yeah.
Oh, we referenced it yesterday with Mark.
Yeah, but we didn't go into it.
Oh boy,
Where the Wizard of Training came from.
That goes down first, before the story comes up.
Well, back in our very first podcast, it was either with, I think it was either Jeff Halvey, Kelly Starrett, or Stu McGill.
One of the three. We did all three like right in the same week or something.
We've actually kind of devolved in the podcast, and we're starting to evolve. So we did them live for a while.
Yes, we did. Yeah,
we did them with whiskey for a while, and then we went to just doing them over Skype. Anyway, we had I believe the drinking had started prior to the podcast. You actually had just got done training. That was the thing.
Oh yeah, because I used to just get done training, barely run in, all winded, breathing in wasted. Oh yeah, because I was already drinking because of deadlifting. Oh yeah.
And so we started the intros, and I'll kind of stop it there for a second. I had trained at the time Amit Sapir and another guy in our gym, Kyle Young. Both of them had at one point referenced "Oh, you're a wizard." And I was like, "Okay." And anyway, Chris had either, I don't know if he heard that or if he just came up with it on the podcast. Also, simultaneously, my office in the gym was an old refurbished storage closet. It was a closet. It was a nice closet. It didn't have any lights in it or any ventilation, but it was my closet.
Oh, that was my favorite, though. I loved it because you were in the closet, and I would come in there to talk to you when I needed to fart. Yeah. And I would come in there and say a few things and drop a bomb and leave.
Which is why it got nicknamed the Fart Box. Yeah. The new office has changed names to the Swolatorium, but we'll save that for another show. Anyway, Chris, we had done introductions. We had just started them, and Chris stumbly looks at me and goes, "And the wizard in the closet, and it's in." I was like, God. That was on I think that had to have been our very first podcast. I was like, son of a bitch. That's going to be here forever.
That's going to stick. Yeah. You can't outrun that.
And so that's where the Wizard in the Closet came from. And at some point, it slowly transitioned to the Wizard of Strength, though I haven't officially embraced it because I do have a cup, but I haven't actually changed my Instagram. So that might be the next evolution of it.
At least put it in your bio.
But I'm officially out of the closet, metaphorically.
Yes. So it is no longer an office. It is no longer a fart box.
I have an office, a real office.
Although
with a
I
window.
do still come bomb your office for entertainment purposes. So.
You make Darrington very upset. He won't tell you that, but he is upset.
And you never read it on his face either.
Yeah. So yeah,
I don't know. I've dropped them a few times, and they're so bad. He almost breaks out laughing. He can't take it.
He's bad.
So he sits there and he's just and you can see he's starting to giggle, and I'm like,
That's just his way of dealing with the absurdity.
Yeah. So if you want to hear Chris's labored breathing and that whole sound bit, it's in one of our very first podcast intros. So luckily, though, hopefully I haven't restarted it with the Wizard in the Closet after that, but
I think we're.
It's a wizard of strength, damn it.
All right, well, let's get moving with today's podcast. So we would like to welcome the muscle doc, Jordan Shallow, to the show today.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
New digs. I like it.
Thank you. We're you are number 2, almost number 1. Almost number 1, except we had a last-minute slide in. Mr. Bell, texted me up, hey, I'm coming up. And he literally said, what's Thursday look like? And we had you scheduled on Friday.
It's fine.
I'll
take second to Mark.
Okay.
I'll take second.
Not a bad person to get bumped by.
Yeah. Sorry. As long as it's not in squatting or something. All right with that.
We did mention to him that it was obviously a huge step up for him moving from the Joe Rogan cast to being on ours.
Strength Talk. What's our name?
Strength Check.
Oh, Strength Check.
There's a lot of confidence in the program here.
We can't remember our name.
It's fine.
Well,
It's
we've
okay.
we've kind of figured out that anytime we do live calls or podcasts, it's more of a break from our real work. So it's just kind of like we come and hang out.
Exactly. Which is why I go back to having a little whiskey.
Yeah.
Is that whiskey and caffeine?
It's
that you got
whiskey
going?
and coffee.
Oh, what a beautiful mix.
It's
I don't
my
know
new
what-
lifestyle brand.
Yeah. Lifestyle brand.
Yeah.
So, Jordan, for those that don't work, Jordan works out of Boss Barbell, which happens to have, and you also work out of, what's the other facility?
CSA.
CSA.
Yeah.
Another great gym with Jesse Burdick.
Yeah.
Working in the Bay Area with some pretty phenomenal lifters.
Yeah, some would argue probably some of the better ones in the world. Yeah, especially right now going into the open. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. So some absolutely tremendous lifters, and it looks like you might lift some weights yourself too. Right?
Product of the environment, I think.
Product-
By
okay.
osmosis. You just kind of put on 20 pounds when you start at Boss.
Okay,
That's
it's
how it
just
works.
like you walk in the door, and it's like a
your membership,
Monday,
your shirt.
and then the next Monday you come in, and it's like you've got 20 pounds on.
PR. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
That's how it works.
I figured that was the case. So this is an interesting thing for me is, when I watch people, just through social media or people I know that are athletes and that don't have a network of clinicians to work with, and they get injured, and they just go to somebody, and they've got a degree, they've got an office, and they listen to whatever that advice is, and I'm very against this, by the way. So, but is there a difference, or what do you see as differences being both a clinician that is an athlete or having the experience working with high-level athletes over somebody that doesn't have that experience?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about objective outcome, right?
Basically, vetting. How do you go about vetting, and what is the benefits of doing that?
Yeah, I mean, don't pick a clinician the same way you'd pick a diner in a town that you've never been to. The second you're on Yelp, you're lost, right? Because the guy that pays for the Yelp ads and is going to be at the top is not going to be the guy that you need. You want to align with someone that has the same objective outcome. Because if you go to a MD, a regular physician, their goal is to get you out of pain. But the people I see aren't worried about pain unless their pain is affecting their performance. I've been watching you walk around for the past half hour. You're in pain. But it's only when that pain gets to a point that affects your performance that you then look to do something about it. So if someone's just trying to get you out of pain, that's easy. Pain has a natural history, right? So if you just didn't lift for the next couple of weeks, you'd probably be okay. But performance doesn't have a natural history. Your performance isn't going to accrue, especially at your level. You've passed a point of diminishing returns. So you need to align with a clinician that understands either from experience with themselves or an experience with dealing with a population that understands that. Because I mean, the sign over the door, regardless of what medical profession you reside in, is first do no harm, right? Where it's I need to understand that the person that I'm dealing with, that's how they feed their kids, right? That's how they make ends meet. So the first do no harm shit means nothing to them. They don't care if they get hurt. They just want to get onto the platform or get back into the ring or get back onto the field or back on the court. So understanding that they're going to do whatever it takes to get there, then it becomes a psychological battle and that's where I think I always say I'm an athlete first. I was an athlete long before I got into training, long before I got into chiropractic college or did my undergrad or anything like that. So it's the empathy, it's the buy-in. So obviously the easiest way to vet is to find someone that's walked a mile in your shoes, where it's it's a different it's a different buy-in where some like with you guys in training, right? Like you guys have good numbers, and again, it doesn't make because you're a good squatter doesn't mean you're good at teaching the squat. But if you can tell people like, hey, I've been there, that's so much different than like it's basically the difference between sympathy and empathy. Like, yeah, that sucks or that must suck. It's different if I can say, oh yeah, no, I tore that here. Oh, you think your bruising's bad? Here, I got bruised from the wrist to the pelvis when I tore my pec 2 months ago, and everyone's like, oh, okay. And like here, you got to slow down. Like you gotta take the requisite steps, which might be accelerated for someone who's a very high level performer. Like again, if that's how you feed your kids and you got to get back on the court, it's like, all right, we're going to try and scale the stimulus of rehabilitation faster for you because you're a higher level athlete. But it's understanding where most people just scale to that point on the spectrum, like, hey, you're not in pain. I need to be able to take you from pain to healthy, but then from healthy to you're strong, like to strong. But then I try and go one further. Let's try and get you stronger. Right, and a lot of that is mitigating or down regulating the risk that comes with all the steps before that led you to get injured in the first place. Right, most people think that, oh, I'm just going to scale resistance. Like I'm gonna take a couple weeks. I'm gonna go back in the gym. I'm gonna see where I'm at. I'm gonna test a max. It's been a couple weeks, and the Grim Reaper's just waiting at that 400 or 500 pounds, and then bam, got you, motherfucker, right in the knee, and then they're back injured again. So it's like
It was 775 today for me.
finding someone that understands that spectrum, understands where they're at the spectrum, but understand that there's plenty of stimulus that we can vary in that rehabilitation process that can get you from injured to healthy, healthy to strong, and stronger to strongest. So yeah, that would be look for those who do first, like who are willing to lay it on the line, and then look for those who have a record in doing so. Because if you don't, you're going to end up, especially in the manual therapy world, like chiropractors, physical therapists, massage therapists, like, you know, we can laugh at medical doctors and be like, oh, what are they going to do? Give you 800 milligrams of ibuprofen? Like, yeah, but you can go to a doctor down the street. You can go to the doctor across the country. You can go to a doctor that your mom goes to or your best friend goes to, and they're all going to do the same thing. At least that's standardized. Where it's like, in my profession, it's like, especially chiropractic, it's like, you can get everything from putting stones on your head and shit, and like, people like, oh, we're just going to adjust your neck and your knee's going to be fine. It's like, whoa, who told you that was the thing, right? So I think definitely finding someone who's at least done the homework on themselves to progress through that spectrum to the point where you want to be, and then further.
Yeah, and you know, another areas that I see an issue is you know, clinicians without that experience not understanding the adaptive stress that athletes need and pulling way too far back because they're dealing with let's say sedentary-ish population, right? So stimulus to get them to make change to recover is going to be totally different for someone like me or even Brandon, who doesn't train that much, but it's going to be totally different. And so I see that as a really common issue. Or the other one from that is just like not understanding like that movement and load as a healer in general, and just like everything is just like completely pulled back. It's medication, rest, like let's not do anything that is any sort of load. Like, I mean, I guess they're both the same thing. So
I think it's just, I mean, half of it I think is fear, because it's fear of the unknown. It's like if you haven't done it, like I prescribed rehab front squats at 225. Most people, like the majority of people walking around in real life, that would give them an injury.
Yeah.
But if I'm trying to tap into stimulus, like sensory input to change a motor pattern, like say I got a guy that he's come out of gear, single ply lifter, sit back, shears the SI joint, chronic. Like, I got to teach him, like, dude, if we're going to try and squat long term raw, we got to start breaking in those knees, man. Like, you got to build up the quads. You've got 1,300 pounds on your back, but we got to get you to break knees and hips at the same time. So I'm going to load you in a way that it'll intuitively make sure that your knees are going to break first. No one in the right mind is going to try and sit back with a bar in their throat. It's going to throw the center of gravity. They're going to put a huge extension moment on the lower back. But and what am I going to do? Like, all right, I want you to grab this orange band, or we're going to go to the TRX. It's like that's a gnat flying into an elephant's ass, right?
So small deviation, because this is a great selling point right here, right now. Our transformer bar, if you haven't seen that, you can actually put the load right there if you want, and get that effect and load it up, and have them progress with that, and then regress with that back towards the back squat. And it's a huge, because we can see those changes happen in the squat, because it forces it to happen, because we've changed where that load is sitting in relation to that hip.
And I think that's another stimulus in the toolbox that a lot of people don't realize. Is like manipulating center of gravity too. But to your point about scaling it to the athlete, like I think a lot of people they pussyfoot around the literature. It's like, they can read Stu McGill's book, which is like a great foundation for anyone to start with. Like before you see a back surgeon, pick up back pain and performance, pick up, basically read anything that Stu's ever put out. But even Stu will tell you, like, you know, the bird dog isn't going to cause a stimulus of instability that'll get you to a 900-pound raw squat. That has to scale.
yeah.
Right. So let's go like a single leg RDL, unilaterally loaded. It's the same pattern.
It's teaching you to have stability in the torso and the spine,
Yeah.
and then add movement through the shoulder or the hip,
Yeah.
right? But now you've got to go take that and actually do something.
Yeah.
You know, that's a remedial, and there's actually more remedials from that you may need to work with. But the bird dog in itself isn't going to get you there.
Yeah, and part of that too is when we buy-in, right? Like, I mean, there are rehabilitation protocols that start with people crawling on the floor. Now, granted, like if you're coming off a spinal surgery, sure, if I can warrant that. But if you're just like a heavy lifter with like a bit of low back pain, it's like I can't, from a psychological standpoint, I can't take a 900-pound squatter in my gym. Like, all right, here we're going to work on crawling patterns. It's like, I'm not going to put this guy through a patterning program where at the time where, I mean, yeah, he's got a big head now, but it's not the third of the size of his body. Right. And two, he's going to look at me like, dude, I'm one of the baddest dudes in like California. I'm not going to freaking get on my hands and knees in the gym. It's like, all right, so here we're going to use this plate or use this kettlebell, use some resistance to progress the stimulus of instability, which I think in the fitness industry has been one of the most bastardized melding together where strength and stability are two separate stimulus.
Well, a lot of people think stability and they think about making something that's difficult to balance over, you know, like a Bosu ball or something like that. And that's one of the biggest changes. I remember when I first got my, first I've never recertified my personal training. What? I'm sorry to let you know that. You're fired.
You don't know anymore.
But even in that, it was like one of the bigger certifications was like, okay, you got to train balance, and then you got to train stability, and then this and this and this, and it's just not the way it is, right? There's certainly a continuum between, you know, stability, mobility, and strength is in there somewhere, but it's not just creating unstable surfaces like balancing. You know?
No, I don't. I think the need for extra physiological instability as a stimulus is a moot point, but it's a way to sell Bosu balls. And that's well and good for the guy selling the Bosu balls. Like glute strengthening to me has been one of
Not just sell Bosu balls, like sell entire training systems and your training products. And like, we do a lot of functional movement stuff, right?
Yeah.
We've got a whole website to corrective exercises. But at the end of the day, we have people training.
Yeah.
And there's so many like very well-respected like movement corrective assessment, like get on their Instagram and they've got people doing this quaint novel movement shit. And they're like, this is what they think the people in the NFL and MMA and stuff should be doing.
Tom Brady, man.
Like
It's TB12.
It's
They're to drink that 5 gallons of water to not get sunburned.
It's snake oil.
Yeah.
Like they're hindering people. They're increasing their risk for injury. Like, and maybe they don't know better, right? But like it's just crazy that it's so predominant from very high levels in fitness right now to push this like functional movement stuff when again like we kind of play in the same ground, but it's like how do we take that when it goes from like cueing and like getting things moving and helping with proprioception for, okay, now we can go apply that. But the whole point is so we can get to squatting with those principles.
Yeah.
Because until we get to squatting with those principles, we're not doing anything.
Yeah. Well, I think people take it on as its own progressive endeavor. It's like, oh, look at me. I'm doing, I'm a marathon runner and I'm doing bicep curls on a Bosu ball. It's like, okay, now SEALs can balance a ball on their nose in SeaWorld, but it's like, there's to what end? Like, congratulations, that's a neat parlor trick, but I look at it like training, right? Like the only reason I've dedicated a lot of my practice and my online business towards that corrective exercise is like if I woke up tomorrow in a world where none of this was necessary, movement prep wasn't necessary, good positions weren't necessary, advantageous length tension relationships with muscles weren't necessary, you'd never see a kettlebell in my hand again. You'd never see another foam roller or lacrosse ball or stretch. I'd get right under the bar and go 1 plate, 2 plate, 3 plate, 4 plate, 5, and just keep going. But I know from a clinical standpoint, I know from a research standpoint, I know from a personal experience standpoint, which is evidence. That's unimpeachable 3 ways around, where it's like, I need to do this. If I want to get as strong as I can for as long as I can, I need to be doing these things. But I only do it for the objective outcome of like, this is going to allow me to squat longer, which will allow me to squat more. So it's direct and indirect correlations to building strength.
No, you're wrong.
No.
You're not going to be a top-level athlete unless you can do handstand walks.
Yeah, for sure.
I think
There's someone out there saying that, I'm sure.
because you're talking about
You'd sure
working,
think it from the amount of people that try to practice that as for their athleticism.
Until next
right?
week, it's some other movement that people are trying to do.
All right, how
like,
many Olympians can do handstand walks?
outside of the gymnastics?
Probably outside of
none.
gymnastics,
Yeah.
none. Like,
Yeah.
I just had this conversation with Kelly Starrett a couple days. Exactly the handstand piece. And I'm like,
Yeah, that's
Yeah, well, it seems like that's getting especially bad in MMA because you mentioned that earlier. But talking about athletes, use the bird dog example. It's the rate of progression through those foundational things is way higher with athletes too, and I think that's something that people mess up is they pull it way too far back and are only doing bird dogs. But you can probably progress somebody in a single session from bird dogs to a single like kettlebell RDLs to deadlifting if they're getting out of back pain and just fixing those movement patterns because they can pick up on it a lot quicker. Their tolerance for load is a lot higher.
Well, let's talk about some of the clinicians in our network that we work with, right? That deal primarily, they deal with us, so they're used to dealing with athletes, but they get a 60-year-old woman in that's got back pain. What do they have them doing by the end of the session?
Deadlifts.
Deadlifts with weight.
Yeah.
Maybe a kettlebell with 26 pounds or whatever it is,
Yeah.
but that's what they're having them walk out to.
and that's the thing. It's
And they did a whole lot of other stuff first, right?
Yeah.
But that was the end goal.
Bringing awareness though.
the hardest thing to sell is education. It's easy to sell a product that'll add resistance, but resistance builds strength. Strength and stability are two different stimulus. Like you talked about that progressive scale from the bird dog. And again, with athletes being maybe more kinematically aware, more in tune with a lot of this started Stu McGill's research, then FMS came out, SFMA, those movement screens, but the correlation there isn't where you'd want it to be, especially for higher level athletes. It's
Go look at some of the stuff on their Instagram. It's funny.
okay. All right. I'm actually gonna. I got an hour and a half flight. I'm gonna pay for the Wi-Fi through Alaska Air just so I can look at that. No,
In concept, it's great. I'm just saying that's again, some of these things have lost, and some of the people involved
sure.
have lost their way.
Yeah,
So-
well, I think being involved in collegiate strength and conditioning, it's like we need, when donors and things are looking at injury rates, it's like, I don't have time to, Cole's notes, 8 years of education and 15 years of experience. It's like, they want quantifiable numbers. It's like, oh, yeah, he scored a 14. Oh, geez, why do I got to explain that to this guy? Why does this matter? But I think, yeah, the ability to scale the stimulus of instability is something that it's free. It's like I'm standing on one leg. That's instability. I've limited a base of support. I have deviation of a center of gravity outside of the base of support. Now, again, we got to scale it to the athlete. All right, put a weight in your hand, but we're not adding resistance. We're increasing that deviation of a combined center of gravity of me and a kettlebell in one hand. Now it's not a kettlebell in both hands. That's strength. Well, your hamstrings and quads are good for 1,000-pound deadlift or however heavy of a deadlift. So it's like if we're going to worry about instability as building an indirect way to building strength, because that'll fortify our weakness. These injuries happen when your strength outruns your stability. So it's like the stability gets here, and it's like plate spinning. We're just strength, and our stability is literally wavering in the background until something goes, right?
Yep. Yeah, that's I taught a kind of combo course with Donnie Thompson a year or two ago, and
Go ahead.
So my piece was on what I call anti-fragility, but it was a lot of what's the concept of doing a shoulder rock swing, mixing in loaded marching, farmer's walk. These are some of the things that get missed a lot of times in our normal barbell strength training, and not having some of those other loads and other, something outside of that, sagittal plane.
Yeah.
We're not able to stabilize and move in those realms, and all of a sudden, a very simple movement or a misloaded barbell or a bad walkout, and boom, you are done. And it's really good to mix in some of these things to make sure that you're addressing those things.
I think you hit the nail on the head with the walkout. The walkout, that's a great equalizer in powerlifting. Screw the 2-hour, 24-hour weigh-in thing. Can you move through that plane, right? Because you're so used, because you're standing on one leg with your max. And you mentioned farmer's walks and the unilateral carries. It's and it does, this thing is you don't need to look far to find this kind of stuff. Your hip hurts on one side, your low back hurts on the other. It's Google search Craig Liebenson low back and show me what you find. The first thing you'll find is put a dumbbell in one hand. Your Q works on one side, your QL works on the other. I wonder if it's the same thing I have here now. But no, people would rather go and buy a lacrosse ball with no education. Tools are great if you've read the manual. right? Like you can give me a brad nailer and a saw. You don't want me to build a house. Trust me, it's not going to be worth living in, like, or at least for very long. And it's the same thing with a lot of the inundation of the fitness industry. It's like there's no education. People are putting furniture in the room without putting steel in the walls first. And it's like, I mean, I'm just sitting back in my office beating my head against the wall. It's like, can we just learn something, please?
So do you have any stories that you could share about, people that you've gotten from, that have had that past experience of working with somebody that just doesn't have that skill set or experience and then has come to you, and what you have to deal with?
Yeah, I mean, in like the physical space, I'm fairly off the grid. Like Instagram and all that, sure, and the online business is one way, but the majority of high-end athletes that I deal with, and that's the thing, like whether you're training clients or whether you're a clinician who's passionate about working with athletes, it's like you got to see the soccer moms first. Like I did my time in corporate wellness. Like I worked at, if we all look at our phones right now, it's likely this is the same company that I worked at in the Silicon Valley at their headquarters for about a year and a half. So it's like I saw a lot of what I didn't want to work with, but I did that to afford me the right and the privilege to be able to, an up-and-coming UFC fighter comes in my office and he's got 3 or 4 shoulder surgeries. It's like he doesn't have any money, but I want to help him because he'll do whatever I say. So that's that's the majority of my patient base now is higher end Olympic athlete, UFC, NFL, and a lot of it starts. It starts like in high school, like the bad patterns that they get. So whether they're broken or not, like I'm not going to name names, but a guy went into the NFL last year, went in the draft, and just like even strength and conditioning at the collegiate level, that's why I decided to throw my hat in the ring with Stanford, was like, no, we got to be more sophisticated than this. There's no way that this is what they're telling. It's like I've talked to better like high school coaches than what I'm seeing in the collegiate level. And then I start to hear feedback from what's going on at the pro level. And it's like, we have a great opportunity to fortify these people and make my job obsolete. Like if you're a in-tune coach or an in-tune strength and conditioning, your ability to have a positive effect on positions and muscle tone and the nervous system is way greater than mine.
And load management.
Yeah.
Those are the two. This is what drives our injuries.
Yeah.
Like poor movement patterns, or not proper management of load and frequency. Right. This is
like I still get
outside of like getting hit by a car.
Sure.
Like that's where it comes from.
Yeah, and that's like I think like Jesse quoted like this, one of the strength and conditioning coaches he worked with, that when you really get to work with high end athletes from a strength and conditioning standpoint that are in season, your job is to make sure they don't trip over weights in the weight room. That's like from when I'm in my office. They've been led down a path. So usually, I'll still get guys that think they should squat to 90 and are wondering why their knees hurt. And then I got to explain to him, like, well, actually, you see how the glute stabilizes the knee, but the knee needs to be past 90. That's actually the most shear force at 90. So the old guard of the high school gym or high school wrestling coach or whatever is still alive and well. And it's like it's because people don't look to the education route to liberate themselves and to fix their problems. It's bash and mash, and I use that approach in a continuum of dynamic movement to get them back moving properly. But post-ops are usually the worst. People coming off a surgery table, because that's the pipeline, especially in professional sports, right? You're going to go, you're off the ice, you're back to see the ortho. The ortho's got an immediate pipeline to the outpatient surgery center. They got the physical therapist waiting for you. And then the physical therapist has this great opportunity to start beginning to scale that process, but they scale from injured to healthy. But guess what? This guy doesn't need to be healthy. He needs to be strong. He needs to be fast. He needs to be resilient through an 82-game season. So it's a matter of having someone that can foster or harbor that entire process and be like, first off, do you need surgery? Can we outfunction this improper structure? And more often than not, like especially with back pain and stuff, like you can definitely do that. But most people, if your only tool is a hammer, everything's a nail, and that old adage, so they just get put into that system where that it's one feeds into the other. It's like, if the kid's got 3 kids in grade school in Silicon Valley, it's going to cost you $90,000 a year. Guess what? Your shoulder's getting cut open and I'm getting paid, right? So I think just reworking the system in a way where you can have someone with a little bit more understanding of what's possible from functionally overriding impaired structure. Because a lot of times it's how they were indoctrinated. It's how clinicians were indoctrinated, right? Like, I always use this analogy that my dog doesn't
cut somebody and never look at how you move.
Yeah,
like that's just
lay a hand on you.
That's incredible.
Yeah,
like because that's the root of the problem to begin with, right? Typically, And yeah, we're going to cut it open and fuse that back or do whatever it is, and we've never addressed like how are they moving.
And they're not
It's just-
ill-intentioned.
no.
Which is like, I
But
always said,
that's-
my dog doesn't know the internet exists. That's how physicians in sport medicine work.
Yeah.
It's like, well, yeah, just because like you don't know the way to structure or functionally override these injuries doesn't mean they're not present.
No. And it doesn't mean that there's not a time and place to cut either.
Exactly.
Right? Like this is, but it's a process that
Yeah.
should be looked at.
We talked about regular MDs too. I think a lot of that comes from people just going to the wrong people for the wrong things. Like if you have low back pain and you go to your regular medical doctor, you're not seeing the right person because they're not. And if it's being caused by the fact that you're moving poorly and you're lifting heavy, then going to a medical doctor isn't going to fix that. They're just not equipped.
I'm going to double back to like my initial point about like the lack of standard of care, because I mean I got to hold my own profession accountable because that's their fault, because they've walked into too many damn chiropractors' offices that are like you can walk in and ask for directions. Like, oh, have you seen the gas stations? Like, Chris, you got scoliosis, man. I can see it. I can see the scoliosis. And they're like, what the fuck? I was just looking for the goddamn gas station, man. So, I mean, that's on us, man. Like, and I got to bear the cross of generations of, frankly, just jackasses, just criminals.
I've got so I've got a lot of chiros on my Instagram, and it's incredible because they'll tell stories. Like every week, I'll see some story of like somebody that was to another chiro that was just doing just some weird, just asinine shit when all they had to do was, teach them.
Yeah.
Teach them to stack the torso and move and how to hinge, and boom, it's taken care of versus like I've got you stretching your hamstrings and just like all the wrong, like literally the wrong things that are making things worse.
Yeah, and I
So-
mean, and honestly, for me, like the actual physical, our name's sake, like our delineating factor is like adjusting, spinal adjusting, extremity adjusting, and it's like I couldn't tell you last time I adjusted someone's low back.
I say almost any good chiro I've dealt with rarely, if ever, does an adjustment. There's times and places.
Yeah.
But that's not the mainstay. It's like, let's do all the work, and at the end, hey, let's, boom, let's check this. Let's, maybe, open up the foot or something like that. But it's like,
But for me, it's like even when I'm adjusting to address, especially in the spine, muscular tone. Just I have no other way of getting in that deepest seventh layer of back muscles. Your transversal spinalis, your multifidus, your rotatories, your inner transverse area. I can't palpably get through, especially with the units like you and you guys. Like these aren't going through thoracolumbar fascia erectors, and they can't get there. And I can't say, all right, go ahead, stretch your multifidus, fire your multifidus. Where with the lat or the bicep or the quad or the hamstring, it's like you have conscious control, but people don't understand the neurology of these deep muscles. And like your body does not trust you to have control of your multifidus, because if one bone goes too far from the other, you've taken your last step and you're paralyzed. So it's like if I can have an effect externally by changing the relative position of origin and insertion, no different than in a static stretch of the bicep. I'm changing the relative perception of length. That's what I'll use.
but
adjusting.
somebody's not coming in for just a back cracking chiro session.
I've sent people out of my office. Oh, can you just adjust my neck? It's like, I'm sorry, is that your name on the diploma on the wall? It's like, no, there's the door. If you want that, you can swing a dead cat and find another chiropractor that'll crack
But
your
again,
neck.
there may be there's a time and place too.
Sure,
But
yeah.
But
I think for people whose red line of physiological load is their own body weight, it can be very palliative. But for someone whose red line is going to be, 425 kilos, 500 kilos, like that nervous system, it's chronological order. Like we have the stimulus of stability builds to strength, builds to hypertrophy through muscles, tendons, ligaments. Then we start getting into bony changes. And it's like, I've dealt with people so far along that they've missed the fundamental stability aspect. And like I can take someone in who can't stand on one leg, and you can cue them, and within 5 minutes get them to hinge in a single leg RDL. You take someone that walks in your door and can't bench the bar, and they want to bench 200. It's like, well, it's going to take more than a few cues to get you to a 200-pound bench. People don't understand the chronological order of your body's adaptations and how stability is so transient and how we can tap into that so fast. Like we can have people, whether it be in here or in the office, like if you know what to look for and you can tap into that right stability and you can access those muscles and fire them neurologically in a way that they need to be like, yeah, the glute med is going to abduct and externally rotate posterior fiber, but that's when you're making it strong. When you're standing on one leg, that's how it neurologically works. It has no business resisting force. It has all the business, or no business exerting force, but all business resisting force. And if you can you can banded, clamshell someone all they want, but if they can't stand on one leg, it's like, well, they're still going to succumb to that same injury that was outrun by strength and stability. So, yeah, it's back to your original point. We've done this to ourselves. Physical therapists the same. Ice and stim, ice and stim, ice and stim. Give them the little scanned off sheet that we've copied 10,000 times with the same little exercises. It's like, we got to be more sophisticated than that.
Yeah,
Otherwise, we're going to lose the battle.
I picked on MDs, but it's everything. You said it's chiros, and you said it earlier, when all you have is a hammer, every problem's a nail.
Yeah.
But it even bleeds into like strength conditioning. You talked about collegiate strength conditioning. There's just not comprehensive education in any of these, and you have to go do a lot of digging outside of your classical education in order to fully understand the entire picture.
Oh, sure.
I've got a good physical therapy story. This is like the Wayback Machine, like early 20s. I did something. I don't even remember what it was, but this was my very first experience seeing a physical therapist. And mind you, I know so many tremendous physical therapists that like. This is not a knock on physical therapy, but this is more this was a general, like, I was just like, I went to like some, I was young, 21. I didn't have a regular doctor or whatever. I had something happen. I don't remember what it was, something shoulder related. And they're like, here, go to this, this physical therapist. And I go in there and she looks at me, had the printout in advance of the exercises I needed to do. Had never done any assessment and told me that I was training, that my problem was I was training too much chest exercises and I needed to train back. Anybody that knows me, that is not the problem for me.
Well, hold on.
Just like,
hold on. Wasn't there an RKC test you took? A kettlebell cert?
Yeah.
Didn't you fail because your back wasn't strong enough?
Excuse the fuck me.
Here's this is going to be a story for the next chat too. But
Andre Duquesne wasn't going to let me take the course. Because I couldn't do a pull-up to spec, and you had to do 5. And I kept pointing to the 7 holes in my arm,
maybe that has something
saying
to do with it.
that it's bone on bone. I can't go higher than this because my elbow is hitting the bone.
Yeah.
And everybody else there knew who I was, all our other coaches, and they're like, Andre, you need to let this guy in. He's strong enough. It's okay. Anyway.
But that's what you're going to find.
well, to be fair, I've never seen you do a pull-up. So I think
I can do many to right when the arms hit. But I can't. See, the bar is...
it's not the chin. The chin is not up.
The chin is not above
You
the
would
bar.
probably have such a strong overhead press because your range of motion would just be that.
Right.
We got to get you to starting strength.
Yeah.
That's what we got to get you to do.
Yes.
There's not enough whiskey in here.
Plenty in the office.
We got to get on that rant one of these days.
Oh, yeah.
Well, now's a good day. Let's go, Joe.
I'm easy, man.
This is a good segue into... so we talked about basically vetting somebody on the clinical side for your help.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the training side. How
Sure.
do you go about vetting, coaches, online coaches? Like, what are the
Especially
issues?
online coaches, because that's what
kinda
the
what we're
majority of these people are looking for is...
A fool and his money will soon part.
So
Easy, right? So it's like you're always going to have the hot chick with like 300,000 paid followers she's going to make money. Deal with it. You be a superlative, be hard to find. Have word of mouth, like have your results speak for themselves, and eventually it will come. But me and Chris were talking about this earlier, where it's like, look for someone who has a good record as a coach, not a good record as a lifter. I mean, I know plenty of fucking amazing lifters. They can't program themselves out of a wet paper bag.
you could see this in any sport. This isn't just powerlifting.
Oh, yeah,
A great athlete does not necessarily make a great coach.
I always look at like
exclusives. They're different sets. It doesn't mean you can't.
Yeah.
But they're different skill sets. And some people have both,
Yeah.
and some they're not necessarily the same thing.
It's like you don't want Usain Bolt to teach you how to run, right? You want to be like the Ukrainian guy in lane 6. You want to learn from that guy because he got there by genetics did not put him in lane 6 at the Olympics. It was some sort of ingenuity in his training, right? So,
Well, you know who Sean Doyle is? 308 powerlifter.
course.
Yeah,
One
great
of my
powerlifter.
favorite lifters.
Yeah. he trained out here for one of our very original members. And, one of the best powerlifters, obviously, of all time. His advice, if you'd ask him, he'd just say, get stronger. You want to lift more weight.
You heard me say I train at Boss
get
Barbell,
stronger.
right?
You're saying get stronger.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? Get stronger.
Pick up more.
Yeah.
But you know what? I think this, like the generation of people out there, there's a time and a place to hear that. And I think and I joked about Boss Barbell because Dan's record as a coach, because he does my coaching, is equally as impressive as his record as a lifter. I mean, he's taken a few people now and taken them from in off the street to world record holders. So there is working cogs in the machine. But for me, we'll talk technique, we'll talk injury prevention, we'll talk movement patterns, and he's right there with me. Like he's talking at a graduate level. But every now and then, when I come out from under a set, hey, you just got to get fucking stronger. Or that was good, but you did everything wrong.
There's actually, one of the guys made a meme of the news thing that ran for me last week, and they're asking me, the news guys asked me, what are you thinking about during the squat? And my response was, just going down and going up. That's not, during the squat, that's all I'm thinking about.
You're probably not even thinking about that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's so.
to double back the original question about online coaching and how to vet, I think take your time, right? Don't go just like I alluded to Yelp with clinicians. That's a big step because that could pretty much lead you down. It can lead you down a pretty dangerous path. I have patients who show me your program. And it's who the hell told you to do this? This is mental. We're competition all 3 lifts 4 times a week, year round. It's you're not building any sort of accessory movement. I'm looking at you. It's you have no base. You have no muscle. Muscle moves weight, guys. Sorry. I hate to tell you, you can't do 1 pull-up, but you're trying to do a 3 times bodyweight deadlift, and you're going to tell me why your SI joint hurts? This is dumb programming. So, vetting that through, hey, could you give me a list of 3 or 4 of your current clients? Just so I could pick it the way you'd pick a grad school mentor or something like that. Go through, do your homework. If you're going to spend the money, because it's getting expensive, because it has to be.
That's a great thing. Is find out who are they coaching and just find somebody to ask them questions. How's the experience? What's it like?
I guarantee you, 9 times out of 10, you won't even get past that. Because if they're a bad coach, they're going to play their cards really close to their chest, which tells you more about them than coaching or getting coached by them ever would, right? So it's open book, train X, Y, and Z. Here are their contact information. I've already asked them in advance if people can contact them in regards to my training style. Yeah, go for it. If you have nothing to hide, if you're unimpeachable from your approach and you have a core principle in which you operate from, it's like the Mark Twain quote, right? If you always tell the truth, you never have to remember what you said.
Well, the other thing is if you find those names and then go on Instagram and you notice that they're all doing the same thing every week, that's always entertaining too.
Everyone hit a front squat PR this Wednesday. Interesting.
It's they all seem to be doing the same thing.
Yeah, but it's more common than people think, and honestly, if you're reaching out to a really high level lifter who hopefully doesn't have the time to be doing this, it's they're outsourcing. And I think maybe a little less so in higher level powerlifting, but I'll take on physique clients, hypertrophy, show prep, stuff like that. And that's where it starts to get really just mass produced, right? It's just, here's the program, here's the diet. It's well, why are you eating like this? You're a 180 pound physique guy. You're trying to bulk you like a 270 bodybuilder. But I think too, it comes down to the client. It comes down to the patient. It's on, you reap what you sow. Just like training, you get out what you put in, and you'll get out of a clinician right what you put in to finding that clinician. So if you're not doing your due diligence, I put a lot of responsibility on my patients because frankly, they're going to be the ones that want to get better. So if you want to get better, you're going to want to listen to what I say because that's why you've ended up in my office. Not to be blunt, but that's usually we've been let down by enough coaches or enough trainers that if you found your way here, it's this is the end of the road, man.
And a good coach or a good clinician a lot of times will fire a patient the other way around, right? Well, why am I wasting my time every week if you're not following through? There's a certain point of the money doesn't matter. I'm here to help people, and there's no follow through.
And I think too, there's a realm of jack of all trades, master of none. It's if you want to run a marathon. Yeah, no. I'm gonna break a sweat tying my shoes later tonight. Not my wheelhouse. You want to be sports specific. You want to get strong, and you want to either rehab or stay uninjured. Yeah, I'm your guy. You do nutrition? Absolutely. If the answer isn't cheesecake, I don't want to fucking talk about it. But here's my network. go talk to this guy.
Yep.
This would be a really good read. Go read everything Andy Galpin ever puts out. Go talk to so and so or whatever. And the better I can refer out to high level professionals in my network who are specialists just like me in my field, they'll always come back to me because I was able to quarterback them and end up getting them to the end result. And equal to them in their networks. It's like they know that, okay, this is nutrition. I know it backwards. I know, because to me, nutrition is a fucking nightmare. Just like the variation of people's like biochemical makeup is way different than arthrology and joint mechanics, in my opinion.
Well, it's just about macros, though, isn't it?
Calories in, calories out, bro. Calories in, calories out.
That's it.
It's easy.
It's
We're
just a
not.
template.
I'm going to
Come on.
stop on the
Yeah.
diet thing right now. We don't want to talk to diet lately. We don't want to talk.
Well, yeah, you mentioned, even price point, like online training's going up and up, but at the same time, at some point you get what you pay for.
100%.
There's a very real reason that we bill, $250 a month for coaching, but we bill month to month.
Yeah.
Is because we're going to earn it every month. We're not going to lock you into a contract. We're not sending you a template. And I think the other biggest thing, and this is something that I don't think a lot of like potential clients look at is your coach actually doing this full time or do they actually have a 9 to 5?
Yeah.
I've met so many coaches, online coaches, in-person coaches. They're like, yeah, I just, I wanted a little extra money on the side, so I decided to do this. I'm like, that's not the
I don't want the same mindset as someone that drives an Uber doing my
Yeah.
online coaching.
Exactly.
Yeah, I just think price and value. That's the biggest difference, right?
People
And-
are always surprised that these guys do my coaching.
Yeah.
Well, that's because it's their job to do that all day. They're going to do way better job.
Yeah.
Easy,
They know
pal. I
the
might fire
principles
you
of
if
the
you.
form. What's that?
I said I might fire you. I don't know.
I was
This
worried
is,
after this last month. Brandon
is
specifically told me
not to do
this
it.
is a bad idea. Don't do it.
He
You're
saw
gonna
you. This is the
die."
first time you met you guys. You're in pain.
Yeah, exactly.
to be expected.
I am. I died this last month. I thought I just explained this. Didn't we just clear this up? I'm literally
He's supposed to go on the record and clear his name. I
We
think
need a
that's all it
Zahir
is.
quote over that. I've always killed myself.
It's all the trending.
I die every day.
Oh man.
So hopefully Brandon doesn't fire me.
You lived.
I did
I
live,
wish you
so-
would have died, but you
Yeah.
lived.
Those are all huge things to look for, though. So you talked about making sure it's something that they're dedicated to.
Yeah.
You talked about knowing when to refer out. That's huge. And then having a nuanced perspective, I think, really covers a lot of like getting away from bad coaches, LMTs, chiros. Like everybody, like they know when to refer out and they have a nuanced perspective. They're willing to explore different scenarios.
So many coaches are afraid of that too. They're afraid to refer out because it's like, oh, I'm not either. I'm not valuable enough, or it's like challenging their intelligence in some way. When it's not that at
scarcity
all.
mindset.
Yeah,
It's the entire fitness industry.
That's like we
scarcity.
refer out to nutrition. We don't make any money off
Yeah.
it. We're just like, hey, here's a good company. Like, go to them if you need this.
Everyone, because the fitness space, especially at this level, is pretty small. Like, it's the same faces, right? It's like the head table at poker. It's like it's a lot of familiar faces when you're at the meets. There's this camp and this camp and this camp, but the guys that get there don't get there on that scarcity mindset. There's plenty to go around because there's so many people that aren't into the shit that we're doing. We're the outliers, especially like I got some weird looks walking around downtown Portland. So I'm like,
Well, you kind of fit in. You get the haircut. You got
You
the
should see
beard.
when I drive around with my big truck.
I could not
be-
even
amongst all the
imagine.
Priuses.
Yeah.
it's just like dirty stairs. Like it's
You could fit a lot of fixed wheel bicycles in the back of that truck, dude. But no, it's just like we're the and people don't realize like you get so inundated with the fitness industry, especially now with social media, that it's in your pocket, it's in the gym, you live and breathe, especially if it's part of your business, where it's like this is such a small subset of the population. And you realize that too when you get in. I mean, at least for me, anyways, with my online coaching, with price being an exclusion criteria, it's like you start to realize that people want to get in, but our barrier of entry into our sport, in powerlifting, in strength sports, is so high when it doesn't have to be. And why? Because it's so much infighting and petty dick slapping where people walk in the door and go, oh shit, no thanks, I'm out of here. Where now a lot of my online clients are just, they're directors, they're CEOs, they're VP. Like, yeah, you charge X a month. Oh, yeah, here, kid, take my money and give me. And next thing you know, they're doing their first meet, and it's like that's how you're going to on ramp people. Yeah. The people kind of take a look from the outside in at the powerlifting community, and it can be like the good of it is. And I played high level sports before this. I played semi-professional hockey, and the best of powerlifting is the best sporting experience I've ever been a part of, like the camaraderie, the community, the amount of work you have to put in, but knowing that because it's an individual sport, the work in is going to equal the work out. But the bad of it is, fuck, I've never seen a bad
It's something
like
on that point, and also it's something I was gonna ask you for was some Dan Green stories, but I'll tell the Dan Green story.
Oh goodness! Should I leave the room? So sorry, Dan. Don't change.
I
it.
didn't listen to this. We're nobody.
so,
It's okay.
You know, like I never did beat him. I kept trying to beat him for years. We were like,
Yeah.
trying to same weight class, going for the all-time numbers, and he was hitting them, and I'd screw up at a meet. Yep, and I wasn't. But the very first person, anytime like I set a record or did something big or an injury happened or whatever, the very first person I heard from via text was Dan.
Yeah.
Dan would, hey, great job.
Yeah.
Hey, how you doing? Like that, like literally your my one sole competition around the world, like is there, and so that says something about the sport.
Yeah.
Like that's where else does that happen?
No.
People talk trash about what's going on and powerlifting and the drama and this and that, but amongst the people that are out there doing like that's huge.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, I get it. Like same thing. I mean, I'd be in Australia, different time zone. You do the math, and I go, "Hey, good luck." And it's like, "What time is it in like North America right now?" And he's like watching the live stream. He's like, "Well, you kind of effed up that third attempt, but we'll talk about it." We got a lot of work, just like because that's the thing with him. It's like I think it's something we didn't touch on, but is a good point. Like the psychological side of a good coach, right? And like, I mean, with him, it's militant technique and. It's okay. That was good, but you did everything wrong. So in training, you're just like fuck. But then 3 seconds. I remember U.S. Open last year, almost or over a year ago now, because it was earlier last year. So I hit my biggest squat. So I hit a 330 kilos. And,
I was like,
yeah, from Canada, man, kilos.
yeah, the competition with Brady over there.
Come on now.
And so up to that point, I had only squatted over 700 in training, and it was ugly and grinder, and probably shouldn't have taken it. But I wanted 700 on the platform. I was like, oh, cool. I've been in this for like a year now, 700-pound squat. That's shit. And so I took like 684 as the second attempt. He's like, you want to go for it? And I'm thinking 704, right, which is 320 kilos. And I'm like, yeah. And then he calls my numbers.
It's like
and he goes,
695.
No, he went 330. So he's like 330 third attempt. I'm like, shit. Well, all right, man. But I almost call it like the Roger Bannister effect. So you're familiar with Roger Bannister, the first guy to run a 4-minute mile, then the next weekend 4 guys ran it or something like that. Imagine running track every day with like Roger Bannister and I don't know, the Usain Bolt. Like that's Herbie and Dan. So it's like you see the impossible move in front of you every day. So it's like, all right, 330. And he goes, yeah, you can do this. And right then it was like, I have some friends who are parents who are really hard on them as kids, and they can remember the day that dad said they were proud of them.
That was it.
He's wrapped on the platform. I can't feel
About to cry. Like,
yeah, I was just like, I hope I'm sweating enough that it hides the tears. But fuck, man, like there's so much power to that and getting the mental side right, which, I mean, that's the hardest thing with online coaching is how do you gauge fatigue? How do you gauge enthusiasm? How do you prompt and encourage it? And then read personalities. It's such an art form. People don't respect it because it's so saturated with people like, oh yeah, hey, link in bio, bro. Link in bio. Like, oh, fuck me dead, man. Come on. I mean, we got to be past this now. Yeah. So that's to me like, but it's like that with anything, like with patient buy-in, the psychology of finding a good practitioner. It's like having, and you with Brandon, like, here are the keys, drive it, kind of thing. So you trust him to take the wheel on your training, which for you, that's everything, man. Like, how long have you been training for now?
Close to 30 years.
Yeah, when you wake up in the morning, train. What do I train? When do I get trained next? When's training? And he's the one that goes, yeah, here you go. This is what you do. Like, that's a huge trust factor. So I think the psychological and the relationship part of that is it's only going to further your success. It's such a multiplier in that space that people don't respect. They just think, oh, I want to get a program from so-and-so. They're going to repost me on Instagram, and I'm going to get a couple more followers.
Yep.
Like,
I'll get to say so-and-so is my coach. Like,
yeah, exactly.
That's the whole thing, right? So there's a huge disconnect between what programming is and what coaching is.
Yes.
And that's why we have a service that is just programming for those who want to. We have one that is coaching.
Yeah.
And surprisingly, when we enrolled our programming service, like nobody bought it. Like everybody actually wants to be coached, or at least they think they do.
Yeah.
I
I think it's rare to find someone that has that self-motivation, that drive, that accountability to the end result without seeking the stewardship of someone like an online coach, right?
Well, even then, I think the thing that I've come back to so often with everyone I've ever worked with, like the biggest thing that matters to them is that I actually care about them. It doesn't even matter like how much, if they put 10 kilos on their squat or 5 kilos or 7 or 20, obviously more is always better. But if they know that you actually care and you're like talking to them, maybe you're, scheduling a phone call with them every once in a while or doing a Skype call with them or like asking them about their actual life.
Yeah.
Like that makes all of the difference. And then they start opening up to you.
Yeah.
Right? They're like, oh man, like I'm having some really hard times in my life right now. So when you get their training program back and you notice all of their results are down, like maybe you can filter that by what's actually going on in their life and not just the methods. Right? And I think that's the difference between what a program is and what an actual coach is.
Yeah, and I think especially with powerlifting, like, this is just an adjunct.
Yeah.
Like, even there's no such thing as a professional powerlifter. If you're smart, you can leverage it into
Leverage it into something else.
Yeah,
but
absolutely. But no one's gonna go, pay their mortgage. I think Chad was talking about this last week. Like pay their mortgage with what did he say? With the open powerlifting or the powerlifting watch world record. It's like, oh, that's great. Wait, what is that? That's when the thing where they do this, right? It's like, oh, fuck, you
Well,
don't even know
you
what
realize it as soon as you
powerlifting
tell
is.
anyone outside
Yeah.
of powerlifting.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, you bodybuild.
Yeah, and this thing, it's like, yeah, I got a 6-side tricep. That's beside the point.
Do you want to see it?
Yeah. I'll probably get further with that than my total, being honest. But yeah, it's part of it. Like, it's just an adjunct to our life. It's something we enjoy. It's something we're passionate about. But shit, I still got like 3 other jobs to pay the bills. Frankly, powerlifting doesn't do shit for me financially. Probably a money sink, honestly. But and then someone else is like, imagine someone who's like, because powerlifting is a sport that's built on the majority of people that aren't professionals. It's a lot like CrossFit in that way. Like the base community, like what you guys are doing this weekend, putting on a 2-day meet. It's like these guys aren't doing it for the gram, right? Like you're probably gonna have soccer moms and guys with 2 jobs and stuff like that. They just do it because they're passionate about it, and that's where we all started.
It's just sometimes the best.
Oh,
I
for
think
sure.
that's I think that might get back to what we were talking about. What makes it such a great sport, is because of maybe that.
Yeah.
I don't know, because there does seem to be some unique things with our culture and the camaraderie and stuff that go on within powerlifting. So
Yeah, I just think it's it's a shared struggle. Like whether you're struggling and you're 60-year-old female struggling with a 150 squat. To see that, I just see my 330 squat. Oh, fuck, yeah, that took some fortitude. I've been there. I could see where you're almost about to pass out a few times.
Yep.
The weight on the bar becomes trivial. The total at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Like, it's more the people you meet and the experiences you have in powerlifting that I think really hold up. And as long as people have that base intent of caring about the people they're coaching or caring about the end result of the patients that they're treating, that's what will move the sport forward, is having that passion at the end of the day is like what's really driving you, right? Because at the end of the day, it's not going to be the money. Sorry.
Everybody's in it because they want to be, and that's a huge thing. I mean,
Yeah.
you'll meet probably not a professional, but college kids that are just doing sports for scholarships because they feel like they have to. And
Oh, I mean, I know people in the NFL right now that they're just freaks.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh yeah, I could do this for a couple of years and make a fee, and then I go work and like I got a business degree because I got a free education and all that. I could fall back, and it's just like, what a luxury that must be. Oh yeah, have fun with that signing bonus, homie. I'm gonna be here working 4 jobs. But hey, you know what? Good on them. And it's like if they get out unscathed, sure. But that to me is not a long game because I want to be powerlifting. I want to go out mid rep, man. Like I want to go out on my shield kind of thing. I want to do this until I'm dead.
Our company is how to teach people how to live better through strengths. That means live like your
Live.
life.
Yeah, first
like
word.
this is an ongoing thing and going to stick with you, not something that you do from 20 to 30 or 35 or whatever. It's like this is how do we do this appropriately and do it to enhance your entire life.
Yeah. No, I think
My
it's-
business partner just turned 69, for example.
No way.
So that was
Yeah.
you
Good
out
on
there,
him. Jeez, yeah. I mean, that should be everyone's goal, and it's all about where you come from, what your motivation is to get into it and start perpetuating it. So,
Well, I think we're getting close to the end. So, do you have something?
No, I was just going to add on to that. I mean, I feel like powerlifting, because it is such a solitary sport. I mean, you need a team is immensely helpful. I mean, at Boss Barbell, we know here that like having people around you with shared mindsets or people who care about you like makes a big difference. But at the end of the day, too, like powerlifting is such a thing that it's more of an expression of who you are, like how much work you put into it. Like you'll see that same amount of work in the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes strength sports in general so special. It's not about being the strongest all time. I mean, it kind of is, but it's also about like, the amount of work that you put in across everything.
That is, how many people have we hired from the gym? And one of our things is evaluating how hard they work. Like, we're like, pretty sure he's going to be a good member of the team.
Yeah, one of our last
Like-
guys were like, he just puts his head down, he works hard,
He works hard. So like, do you want a job? He's
Yeah.
gonna, like,
That's the
like we
resume.
know, and that's how he works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He puts his head down and he goes to, like, you see that.
Yeah, name another sport where that's self-evident.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you can be a great golfer, but I'm not going to hire you on the spot. Like,
No.
if I,
Yeah,
God
that
bless,
doesn't-
You might be an asshole.
I don't have daughters. I know I'm
yeah.
going to have daughters, but I'm going on the record. But if a guy walks in and looks like me, he's like, yeah, you're good. He might be a piece of shit, but at least you got work. At least you got work ethic.
He's got work ethic.
Yeah,
We know
I
that.
know where he's
Yeah,
going to
yeah.
be on Saturday night. That's easy. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, Jordan, where can people find you?
Yeah. So I mean, if you're in the Bay Area, if you're in the Oakland, East Bay, I'm in Dublin, California with Jesse Burdick at Combat Sports Academy. If you're in Silicon Valley, South Bay, Mountain View area specifically, I'm in Boss Barbell at a Dan Green's gym. If you go to Stanford, play on the rugby team, you should be at practice right now, so you shouldn't be watching it. But yeah,
I know who you are, Johnny.
Online, where can people find you?
oh yeah,
So
best.
you produce content that helps people like with
Yeah, so
watch your
YouTube,
videos.
like the Muscle Doc, he just kind
Prescript, what else you got?
Freaking, it's the wizard in the closet
wizard.
of handles, honestly. Yeah, so www.pre-script.com is where I do a lot of my corrective exercise programming. I work with a business partner, also host a podcast together called RX Radio. Instagram at @the_muscle_doc. If you want to email me, it's Jordan at themuscledoc.com. And the website for my practice and online stuff is www.themuscledoc.com.
All right, the Muscle Doc.
Muscle
That's it.
Doc.
That's me.
All across all that.
Muscle
Yeah,
Doctor.
easy.
Okay, well, we
Myo Doc.
really enjoyed this conversation today.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on.
Great having you in, and yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you guys having me.
Yep. All right. That's a wrap.
We're good.